Okay, let's just get right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to completely rethink something I know you've encountered dozens, maybe hundreds of times, the corporate training room. The source material we're looking at today makes a really fascinating case. Training room layouts, they are absolutely not just some logistical afterthought. They're actually strategic tools that directly drive learning outcomes. So whether you're an HR manager, an EA, or an event organizer, how you set up your room literally dictates everything, from participant engagement to whether or not your facilitator can actually do their job effectively.
Here's our floor plan for this explainer. 1. The hidden impact of layout. 2. Structured versus collaborative. 3. Driving discussion. 4. Presentations versus action. 5. Mastering the hybrid setup. And 6. Choosing your layout. Let's hit it.
All right, there's a massive paradigm shift we need to make right off the bat. Ask yourself, does your training room layout actually support learning or just seat capacity? Look, it's so easy to stare at an empty room. Look at a spreadsheet of 50 delegates and just try to cram them all in so everyone has a chair, right? But if maximizing capacity is your only goal, you're honestly probably sabotaging the learning outcome before the session even starts. We've got to shift that mindset from just fitting people into a box to actually facilitating genuine understanding.
Which brings us to part 1, the hidden impact of layout.
The absolute most crucial takeaway here is this. The best training room layout is simply the one that supports the learning objective. That's it. Form has to follow function. The room setup dictates literally everything. It affects how delegates see the presenter, how they interact with each other, whether they can actually pop open a laptop and take notes, and how freely the facilitator can move around. A bad layout, it totally kills engagement. It creates those awful, awkward sightlines. If your people are twisting their necks just to see a screen, they are definitely not learning. They're just getting a backache. Your layout has to work for the facilitator, not against them.
Moving right along to part 2, structured versus collaborative spaces.
Let's compare two heavyweights, the classroom layout versus the Cabaret layout. Imagine you're sitting through a really heavy compliance training session where you absolutely have to take extensive notes. You're going to want that classroom setup for sure. It gives you desk space, a clear focus on the presenter, and a lot of structure. But what if you're going to a team-building workshop that completely relies on peer learning? Suddenly, that classroom setup feels incredibly rigid, almost stifling. That is exactly where Cabaret comes in. By using grouped tables, it naturally encourages group exercises, open conversation, and just a much more relaxed, collaborative vibe.
Let's look a little closer at the classroom layout. This is probably the most common setup you'll see, and honestly, for good reason. Rows of tables and chairs, everybody facing the front. It's totally perfect for software training, compliance, certification programs, you name it. Why? Because everybody gets their own table space for laptops and workbooks, and everyone has a crystal clear line of sight to the screen. But, and this is a huge but, you really need to avoid this layout if your session involves heavy networking or highly interactive peer-to-peer discussions, because otherwise your delegates are basically just staring at the backs of each other's heads the whole time.
So, what if you do need people talking to each other? Let's jump to part 3, driving discussion and decisions. Now we're looking at two incredible setups for smaller groups, the U-shape and the boardroom. The U-shape is exactly what it sounds like. Tables arranged in a U facing the presenter. It's phenomenal for leadership training. It gives you super high eye contact, open dialogue, and, this is key, it allows the facilitator to literally step right into the center of the group to engage directly. The boardroom, on the other hand, puts everyone around one single, solid, central table. This is your classic go-to for executive training and strategy sessions. It champions privacy, confidentiality, and focused decision-making. Neither of these is great for massive groups, but for intimate, conversational learning, absolutely unmatched.
Let's shift gears to part 4, presentations and hands-on action. On one end of the spectrum, we have the theater style. Rows of chairs, absolutely zero tables. It maximizes capacity and keeps all the attention fixed squarely on the presenter. It's the definition of passive listening. But on the flip side, we have the workshop setup. This is all about active participation, design thinking, role play. You've got movable furniture, open spaces, whiteboards, breakout zones. In a workshop layout, your delegates are physically practicing skills, not just sitting there listening to someone talk about them.
Actually, let's pause for a second on this quote from the source material about theater style. Theater style provides limited table space and less opportunity for interaction. I think we can all relate to that very unique corporate misery of being stuck in a theater layout for a full 8-hour training day, right? Trying to balance a blazing hot laptop and a heavy workbook on your knees while furiously taking notes. It's the worst. Look, theater style is great for a short, high-capacity briefing or maybe a 1-hour keynote,
But a long, interactive training day? Please, for the love of everything, save your delegates' knees and get them some tables.
Which brings us to the modern reality in Part 5, Mastering the Hybrid Setup.
These days, getting the physical room right is really only half the battle. A successful hybrid setup demands some seriously heavy technology. You cannot just point a laptop webcam at the presenter and call it a day anymore. To do this right, so your remote or interstate teams aren't totally left out of the learning experience, you need dedicated room cameras, wide coverage microphones, extra screens just to see the remote participants, rock-solid Wi-Fi, dedicated chat moderation, and crucially, on-site technical support. The learning outcome here relies entirely on those remote participants being able to see, hear, and contribute just as clearly as the folks sitting right there in the physical room. So, how do you actually synthesize all this and make the right call? Let's wrap up with Part 6, choosing your perfect layout.
When you go to book that next room, just run through this quick chronological checklist. Step 1. Start with the training outcome. Just ask yourself, what do my delegates actually need to do today? Listen, discuss, collaborate, practice. Step 2. Consider the session length. A quick 1-hour session can totally survive theater style, but a full day or multi-day program, you need serious desk space and breakout areas. Step 3. Technology needs. Think about whiteboards, flip charts, all that hybrid tech we just talked about. And step 4, delegate comfort. Are the sightlines good? Is there natural light? Is the seating actually ergonomic?
And while you're at it, make sure you actively avoid these super common pitfalls. Don't fall into the trap of choosing a room based solely on its maximum capacity. Don't forget about screen visibility. Literally walk the room yourself and check for any awkward angles. Never, ever underestimate how much power and Wi-Fi dozens of laptops and live polling platforms are going to eat up. And please, make sure you leave physical space for activities. A crowded, jam-packed room absolutely suffocates participation.
Okay, here is your master cheat sheet summarizing everything we've pulled from the source material. You've got Classroom for structure, Cabaret for collaboration, U-shape for facilitated discussion, Boardroom for those focused executive sessions, Theater for mass presentations, Workshop for hands-on flexibility, and Hybrid for remote access. Every single one has a very specific strength and a very specific limitation. Your job? Match the strength to your learning objective.
Now, a really great tip from our source is that you don't actually have to figure all this out in a vacuum. Relying on purpose-built training venues, they specifically mention places like Karsten's, can eliminate so much of your event day risk. Because these venues are designed from the ground up, specifically for learning and corporate events, they offer flexible setups, built-in AV, rock-solid Wi-Fi, and those super crucial breakout spaces completely out of the box. It just makes choosing and pivoting between all these different layouts entirely seamless.
All right, to wrap this whole explainer up, I want to leave you with one final, kind of lingering thought. Your room layout actually speaks to your delegates before your facilitator even says a single word. It tells them if they're expected to passively listen or actively collaborate. It tells them if their comfort actually matters. So, before your very next session begins, ask yourself, what is your room saying? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep designing with purpose, and we'll see you next time.